In 2026, Poland stands out as one of the most militarized nations in Europe, with a defense budget reaching an impressive 4.7% of GDP in 2025 and plans to raise it to 5% or even 6% in 2026, surpassing all NATO allies, including the United States. This massive investment, estimated at around $55 billion per year, reflects an aggressive strategy of modernization and expansion, driven by Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and rising tensions along NATO's eastern flank. The Polish Prime Minister has declared 2026 the year of acceleration in building the strongest army in Europe, with ambitious goals to expand the armed forces to 300,000 troops by 2035, up from the current 216,000. Poland's rearmament is multifaceted. In the land domain, Poland has already received more than 413 K2 Black Panther main battle tanks from South Korea over the past 36 months. With plans to locally produce the K2PL variant starting in 2026, ensuring industrial independence. Add to this 250 USM-1A2 Abrams SEPV-3 tanks, creating an armored fleet that could exceed 1,000 to 1,100 vehicles by 2030, surpassing the combined capabilities of France, the United Kingdom, and Germany. In artillery, the country has acquired hundreds of HIMARS launchers, the system that proved decisive in Ukraine, and 364 K9 Thunder self-propelled howitzers, with deliveries completed in 2025. In the air, sovereignty is reinforced by 48 F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters, with deliveries beginning in 2026, and the largest fleet of AH-64E Apache helicopters outside the United States, totaling 96 units. The Navy gained strength with Arrowhead 140 frigates, and Saab 26 submarines from Sweden, optimized for operations in the Baltic Sea. Beyond hardware, the focus on human capital is striking. A new voluntary military training program aims to train 400,000 people in 2026, including courses in survival, cybersecurity, and civic readiness, building a strong and resilient reserve force. This buildup is not mere posturing. It is a direct response to what Poland describes as Russian aggression, with intelligence assessments indicating that Moscow may be preparing for a larger conflict within the next 3 to 4 years. Projects such as the Eastern Shield, budgeted at €6 billion through 2028, are fortifying the borders with Russia and Belarus using ISR sensors, anti-drone networks, and physical barriers. Poland also benefits from €44 billion in loans from the European Union through the SAFE program, funding the acquisition of American and European weapon systems. In short, Poland is no longer a nation being protected. It is the protector, filling the vacuum left by the American pivot to the Pacific and positioning itself as the backbone of European defense. But to understand why Poland invests so heavily in defense today, we must return to the roots of its history, a narrative of glory, collapse, and rebirth that shaped a resilient people ready to defend every inch of their territory. Poland's history dates back to the 10th century, when Duke Mieszko I converted to Christianity in 966, founding the first Polish state known as the Duchy of Poland. This act was not merely religious, it was a geopolitical maneuver to align the country with the Christian West, avoiding invasions by neighboring pagan peoples. Under the Piast dynasty, Poland expanded, with Bolesław the Brave crowned its first king in 1025. The kingdom later faced internal fragmentation, Mongol invasions in 1241, which devastated Kraków, and persistent threats from the Teutonic Knights. In 1410, at the Battle of Grunwald, Polish-Lithuanian forces crushed the Teutonic Knights, marking one of the greatest medieval victories in European history. In the 14th century, the personal union with Lithuania evolved into the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1569 through the Union of Lublin, creating one of Europe's largest states, stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. This noble republic was innovative, an elective monarchy with the liberum veto, in which a single noble could block parliamentary decisions, promoting an early form of democracy, but also sowing the seeds of its future weakness. Economically prosperous, driven by grain exports, and culturally rich with religious tolerance during the Reformation, Poland withstood Ottoman, Swedish, and Russian invasions. Heroes such as King Jan III Sobieski, who saved Vienna from the Ottomans in 1683, epitomized this golden age. However, the 18th century brought decline. Constant wars drained resources, and a paralyzing political system allowed deep foreign interference. The turning point came in the late 18th century when Poland, weakened by internal corruption and the Liberum veto, became easy prey for ambitious neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. 3 successive partitions in 1772, 1793, and 1795 erased Poland from the map for 123 years. The first partition in 1772 was orchestrated by Catherine the Great of Russia, Frederick II of Prussia, and Maria Theresa of Austria. They annexed roughly 30% of Polish territory and about half of its population, justifying it as the recovery of ancient lands. Poland lost access to the Baltic Sea and vast agricultural regions, yet resilience persisted. Reformers such as King Stanislaw August Poniatowski championed the Constitution of May 3, 1791, the first modern constitution in Europe, abolishing the Liberum veto and promoting civil rights. This, however, alarmed its neighbors. In 1793, the Second Partition, led by Russia and Prussia, reduced the country to a tiny buffer state. Resistance emerged with the Kosciuszko Uprising of 1794, led by Tadeusz Kościuszko, a hero of the American Revolution. Uniting nobles, peasants, and burghers, the revolt promised the abolition of serfdom and the defense of independence. Early victories, such as the Battle of Rakowicz, inspired hope, but Russian and Prussian forces ultimately crushed the movement, capturing Warsaw after a massacre. The Third Partition on October 24, 1795, sealed Poland's fate. Russia seized the east, Prussia the center, and Austria the south. The king abdicated and was exiled to St. Petersburg, while the powers agreed to erase the name Poland from maps and official documents. This division was not merely territorial, it was an attempt to eradicate Polish identity through Russification, Germanization, and Austriacization. Despite this, the Polish people endured. Exiles such as Kościuszko and Prince Józef Poniatowski fought alongside Napoleon, forming Polish legions that dreamed of reclaiming their homeland. The Duchy of Warsaw, created by Napoleon, offered a brief glimpse of independence, but the Congress of Vienna in 1815 redistributed territories, creating the Congress Kingdom of Poland under Russian Tsarist rule. Subsequent uprisings, the November Uprising of 1830, the Spring of Nations in 1848, and the January Uprising of 1863, were brutally suppressed, with deportations to Siberia and executions, yet they kept the national flame alive. Poets such as Adam Mickiewicz and composers like Frédéric Chopin preserved Polish culture in exile, nurturing a patriotic romanticism that cast Poland as the Christ of nations, sacrificed to redeem Europe. World War I, which destroyed the partitioning empires, opened the path to independence. In 1918, Józef Piłsudski, a military and political leader, proclaimed the Second Polish Republic. The Polish-Soviet War of 1919 to 1921 tested this new nation. Facing Lenin's Bolsheviks, the Poles, outnumbered, won the Battle of Warsaw in 1920. This victory halted the advance of the Red Army and prevented a possible spread of communism into Western Europe. The victory also consolidated Polish independence and became known as the Miracle on the Vistula, reflecting the seemingly miraculous defeat of superior forces. Resilience came from nationwide mobilization, with volunteers from all social classes. The Second Republic, despite internal instability, modernized its army and economy. But in 1939, Nazi and Soviet invasions once again divided the country. Poland endured immense suffering. The Holocaust annihilated 90% of its Jewish population, and 6 million Poles were killed. Resistance was fierce. The Home Army, the largest resistance movement in occupied Europe, launched the Warsaw Uprising in 1944, fighting Nazi forces for 63 days, despite Soviet betrayal, as Red Army units halted on the far side of the Vistula River. This struggle, which cost 200,000 lives, symbolizes Polish tenacity. After the war, Poland fell under Soviet domination, becoming a People's Republic in 1945. The communist regime suppressed freedoms, but resilience endured. Strikes in 1956, 1970, and 1980 culminated in the Solidarity Movement, led by Lech Wałęsa. In 1980, 10 million people joined the Union, forcing negotiations that paved the way for the collapse of communism in 1989. The transition to democracy was peaceful. In 1999, Poland joined NATO, and in 2004, the European Union, fully integrating into the West. But Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the invasion of Ukraine in 2022 revived memories of the partitions. As Ukraine's neighbor, Poland saw clear parallels: disputed territories and Russian interference. Having doubled the size of its army since 2014, Warsaw invests in defense to prevent the worst, another division or occupation. This historical resilience, surviving partitions, wars, and totalitarian regimes, drives the current rearmament. The Polish people, with an identity forged through adversity, overwhelmingly support military spending. Polls show around 80% in favor of increased defense budgets. Programs such as voluntary military training echo past uprisings, preparing civilians to resist if necessary. Economically, Poland has grown from a post-communist state into the sixth largest economy in the European Union, financing its military transformation. By 2026, with the war in Ukraine ongoing, Poland leads the effort, hosting NATO troops, providing more than $3 billion in military aid to Ukraine, and advocating for a more heavily armed Europe. The Prime Minister warns that Russia is planning a war within the next few years. Thus, Poland refuses to repeat the mistakes of the 18th century. It is building a force designed to deter aggressors, honoring ancestors who fought for freedom. Poland in 2026 is the culmination of centuries of struggle, from medieval glory to traumatic partitions, from world wars to victory over communism. Its resilience, cultural, military, and national, transforms a past of victimhood into a future of leadership. By arming itself to prevent the worst, Poland not only protects its own borders, but strengthens Europe as a whole. As Lech Wałęsa once said, "Freedom is not given, it is won." That is Poland's enduring lesson, the new military power of Europe. Poland is doing its part to protect itself, but what if the rest of the alliance collapses? If you want to understand the tensions shaking the Western coalition, click now on this video where I explain why many believe in the end of NATO.